All right, psychology. Um, so, new series. I guess I should preface this with it's raining. I've I think, maybe found a way to actually record when it's raining, which is just makes me feel all giddy inside because given it seems to be just kind of the general theme of this to record at some stream somewhere, this channel that is. Um, Recording a stream in the rain, it would be wonderful because I don't know about you, but I like streams most in the rain because that means I don't even have to sit near the parts where they get all rushy. Even the just kind of slow moving parts like this get interesting when it's raining. Anyway, so it's lightly raining right now. I figured I'd test this today, uh, given that even if it doesn't work and I'm actually screwing my computer up, I figure I won't screw it up that much, given it rained for like 10 minutes straight and I'm dry already because it was just so light. In fact, I think it's still technically raining. You can see, I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera, but it's really light uh, little drips into the water. It's all, but I can't feel it in the air. It's sitting here, so I don't know. So, psychology. First things first, I suppose I'll explain this new series. Sorry if you don't like these, just skip into like 5 minutes. Like I've first episode in every series, I try to explain what I'm trying to do with it. So, I guess I should preface this: I'm not a professional psychologist. In case it wasn't obvious, well, I suppose it wouldn't be that obvious for you. All you know, I have like 8 doctorates, but I'm not a professional psychologist. In fact, I've probably taken less college psychology classes than most people, or than most of you, anyways. Which I suppose would be still most people. I took one and didn't hate it, but didn't like it either. I realized pretty thoroughly that if I didn't need to take another one, I wasn't going to. So, uh, in this, but that doesn't mean that there aren't uh, psych, psychological concepts which are still interesting to me, and which I have myself researched. So, anyways, when I discover a little like blip, a little, not a whole concept. I recently did a thing on bystander apathy. I'm not gonna that that would take me an hour and a half. I'm not gonna do it, or at least I'm not gonna do it today. But one thing that I recently researched is, as the title likely suggests, I don't know what I'm going to title these things when I record them. It'll come up in the video. Um, but as the title in one way or another suggests, um, smiling, the innate responses. Uh, One thing that's always, honestly, it's creeped me out for a long time, is that when I'm walking by people, especially women, they smile at me, and I've never understood that. For various reasons, innate responses aren't very innate for me. Um, at least a lot of them aren't. So the result of this is that until recently, well, no, I've started to understand it for the last few years, but it finally occurred to me, like, surely someone knows exactly why this is happening, and I found out they do. When it's similar but different with men, one thing, it's the kind of thing that most people just don't question. It's the thing I had to learn to do with men was the nod. Uh, I have heard people say that that's it's tied to a specific race or class or something like that. I can tell you from experience, as I'm sure any male can, and just thinking to their own experiences with people of other races and classes, it's not really. It's really just a male thing, and I'll tell you why these. And it's the same with women, although the difference between men and women sort of clashes here. Uh, I've heard different theories, which I'm going to go over, as to why specifically it happens, but men do the little nod and women do a smile. Now, I guess I'll go over why. No, I'll go over. Yeah, okay. The reason for this is non-threat. It's to send the message of aware of their presence and non-threat. It's a little different for men and women, it seems, but the general it seems like the general idea about this is that for women, it's more or less looking to the person, smiling at them to tell that person, I am not a threat to you. And then seeing if they smile back as a gauge of, are they a threat to me? Now, this isn't conscious, I should preface. None of this is conscious. The nod is a little bit conscious, but it's the kind of thing where if someone's in a really bad, this is the thing which has always struck me as strange. I can see someone who's just angry, having a bad day. As soon as they make eye contact with me, they smile. And that's never made sense to me. It still doesn't now that I understand it, but it doesn't make sense, but I know why it happens, I guess I could say. So it's more or less to say I'm not a threat to you, and to gauge if they are a threat. To say that person A says to person B by smiling when they make eye contact, I'm not a threat to you, person B. And person B, in smiling back, tells person A, neither am I to you. So they feel fine either ignoring or talking to each other. If the eye contact, and that all comes down to stuff like how long the eye contact stays, their visual cues, for instance, if they're similar, if they think of themselves as similar, things like class, race, group, etc. So, that can gauge, and then of course, whether or not they feel that they are in a hurry or not. If it's two people just casually wandering around, for instance, one example would be a park. Yeah, a children's playground kind of park, or at least the part of the park which is the children's playground. You've got several parents. Two of them are fathers. We'll say two of them are mothers. Who do you think is likely to talk to who? Now, the situations could be super skewed. They could be two of them could be homeless, a male and a female, and two of them could be 1%ers. So that would definitely skew things. But if you're assuming just generally middle-class families here, and it just so happens to be the four parents who, separate parents for reference, who brought their children to the park that day rather than the other two fathers or the other two mothers, which are not present in this case. In this example, I want to actually, you know what? I'm going to move the camera. I said I wouldn't do it, but I'm going to move the camera. There's a mallard with something really funny going on. There he is. I don't know if you can tell in his tail, but it seems like he's got a little piece of plastic stuck in it. Either that or I didn't think feathers curled when they got wet, but I guess, I scared him off. Well, either way, so I thought I would, so most likely male will talk to male, female will talk to female, and that's because presumably for the males at some point, likely when they first notice each other, there will be a nod. After that, at some point, they'll look over each other, and then after that, they'll see each other as they've already seen each other as non-threats because they've exchanged the nod. In this case, they will look over each other to see if they're within a similar group. Well, I don't want to be crude about it, but more or less, middle-class, white, suburbia kind of people. Non-threatening kind of stuff. It's 1,000 factors affect this, but it's generally on a glance whether or not someone seems friendly to you. This is what is determining that. One thing is if they don't respond properly, which is why men and women oftentimes clash, is if they don't respond with the expected response. Now, we deal with the opposite sex all the time, so we're kind of used to them not responding as one of our same sex would. That's not to say that if a female smiles at a male and a male smiles back rather than nodding, they won't seem all the more friendly to them. They'll seem all the more acceptable. But it can clash because when a male has a bad day, they don't smile. They'll still nod, but they won't smile. So I've noticed that the reverse response for women or for females seems to be a frown. So I have had interesting situations where, well, talking about this after I learned that I'm expected to give the nod, um, that I would nod to them but be frowning because it was maybe a bad day for whatever reason. And they would respond in the opposite manner. So, okay, I guess I should explain this. Opposites are true in this case, which is to say, because smiling would tell them that you are either a non-threat or possibly even a resource, although I don't want to get totally objectivist about this. People aren't just resources. Um, but because someone to talk to versus someone who's a threat, a frown would tell them I may be a threat to you. So although they wouldn't think that person is a threat, most likely they would still here unconsciously try to avoid them or edge around them. Or you can see it most obviously when they have kids, especially little kids, which is when well, one example is it's an uncomfortable one to all of us, but it's when you see people do things like lock their car when they're going by people they view even unconsciously as less desirable. So you get a homeless person walking by your car and you lock the doors. Um, it's similar to that. It would tick them into the innate responses of the opposite regard. Instead of they I don't have to realize they exist to they might be a good person, you get the opposite side, which is uh, they are a minor annoyance to they pose a direct threat to me. Now, of course, this is all into hunter-gatherer stuff, so you can't say it's sexist. Is the thing. I think this could very easily lead into an argument of sexism on both sides. For reference, you could say that uh, women in not or females. I keep saying women and men. I mean males and females. This isn't specifically tied to age, um, although it does seem to be learned at least partly. At least the nod and the smile. I think these might be cultural factors, but I think that they're generally different for males and females, unless there's like a female who's basically, well, unless you get a super collectivist culture where they're basically raised in the exact same manner, perhaps even together. Although I can't think of a culture where they're really raised in that manner. Bees, I suppose, if people were raised like bees. But then, is there female bees other than the queen? Huh. That's a strange thought. I'll have to Google that later. Um, the world would end if we didn't have Google, I swear. Um, so, uh, one thing is, yeah, so you could imagine, in this case, for instance, a female not saying it could be sexist of a male not to smile in return, because that would subdue any unconscious responses. So, all right, maybe that wouldn't. I'm not explaining why this could be sexist well, but I personally don't think it is. I think that it's as sexist as the culture. So if you go in for the belief that culture, at least the culture which you are in, is inherently sexist, then this is simply an exemplification of that. If you do not, then this is just an interesting effect of male and female biology. Um, I sit somewhere in between, honestly. It's kind of undeniable that our culture has come up from less than equal roots, but on the other hand, I don't think people are actively trained to do this for any particular sex reason. Um, so I think it might be, at least I think that even if my personal theory here is that even if we were trained, even if you were in that bee situation, presuming that there are female bees who aren't the queen, um, even if you were in that bee situation where everyone's raised the same, uh, then as close as you can, at least, I still think that I still think that the responses would be different, although they might be slightly different. So we'll use the nod here just because I'm male and I see it as the simplest and most obvious. Again, I'm male. I'm used to it. I see the smile as kind of unnatural, honestly, just because, smiling is supposed to mean happiness, but for instead of non-threat is the nod. Anyways, I'm used to it, so I'm going to go with it because it's the easiest way for me to explain it. I think, for instance, if everyone were raised identically, I think it would still be a different response between the sexes. But I think this difference would be really slight. For instance, the difference between the nod might be, well, for instance, maybe the difference between the nod up and the nod down, which I haven't personally deciphered the difference yet. I don't know if most people have. It seems, since it's an innate thing, I think this can be really subjective. Um, so I haven't figured out what the difference between nodding up, maybe something like exposing your neck, that's vulnerability. But then it seems to have something to do with camaraderie and friendship, versus nodding down, which seems to be the generalized one uh, for acknowledgement of existence of another and of their ability to defend themselves or whatever. Uh, all right, this was a little more rambly than usual. Let's check the time. 16 minutes. Oh wow, I'm I wow. I haven't been talking for at all today. This is strange of me. I should preface. Usually these suckers end at like 18 minutes if there's nothing to talk about, and 2022 if I have one good thing. I thought this would be a regular video of 2022, but I guess not. All right, so I enjoy the generalized response, which is, oh, I should preface this for people who watch the channel in general. The generalized response, that little black message, goodbye, by the time you watch this, it might be something different, but it probably will just be the goodbye. I'm working on that, but I think that's a pretty solid replacement. I don't want to like triple use another one, but for now, the only one I really have a good thing for is the turkeys for psychology or for philosophy, and the dogs for the vlogs or for the neo vlogs. So yeah, uh, that's it. Enjoy the generalized until I figure out a better one. Outro.